As an instructor, I never expect you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you how I would approach the annotation challenge drawing. On my screen, I have both examples. The finished version is on the left, and the version that needs to be completed is on the right. I'm going to start by creating a text style. If I look at the notes in the finished example, I can see that all text that I create needs to be of the Arial narrow font, and it should be represented at a height 0.15. To create the text style, I will open the annotation panel and I will click the text style icon. I'll click the new button and I'll call this style Notes and Callouts. I'll then assign it a font of Arial narrow. Since this text is going to be used in dimensions and callouts, I'm going to leave the height set to 0 for right now. We just have to have an understanding that when we enter the text, it needs to be a height of 0.15. When I'm finished with the style, I'll click Apply and Close. I'll then switch to the Notes and Callouts layer, and I'll recreate this list of notes. To do that, I'll launch the multi-line text command, and then I'll click 2 points on screen to define the width of my column. In the text editor, I will change the height to 0.15, and then I can start typing. After the first number, I will press the Tab key. That way, AutoCAD knows I'm creating a list. As I enter this, it looks like all of the arrowheads in this file will measure 0.125. And based on note 4, it looks like all of the remaining layers are provided for us. Now that I'm finished with the list, I'm going to click Hold and drag across the word Notes, and I'll come up and click the Underline button to underline that text. I'll then click on Screen to close the editor. Next, I'd like to create a dimension style. To do that, I'll open the annotation panel, I'll click the dimension style icon, I'll choose New, and I'll call this style My Dimensions, and I'll click Continue. Let us go to the Symbols and Arrows tab, and based on the notes we need to make sure the arrow size is 0.125. I'll then go to the Text tab and I'll make sure that we are using the Notes and Callouts text style, and I'll set the text height to 0.15. Finally, I'm going to jump over to the Primary Units tab. If you look at the finished example, you can see the majority of these dimensions are up to 2 decimal spaces. So I'm going to open the Precision setting and I'll change this to 2. When I'm finished, I'll click OK. My dimension style is now current. I'll click Close. I'll then flip to the Dimensions layer and we can add some dimensions. I'll click the Linear option and I'm going to dimension the overall width of the part first. I'll then zoom in and we'll add some of these interior dimensions. I will create another linear dimension from the lower right corner to the lower right corner of this interior edge. I'll pull this out and click to place it, and you can see that my dimension doesn't match the original exactly. To correct this, I will select the dimension and then I'll click the grip over the number and I'll drag this to the other side. Let's zoom back out on the finished example. I'll come back to my drawing, and since I've got a continuous string of dimensions, I'm going to select my previous dimension. I'll hover over the grip and I'll choose Continue, and I'll pull this over to the center of the circle, this corner, and then to the center of the arc. And I'm having a little trouble grabbing that, so I'm going to Shift right click to bring up the Object Snap menu. I'll select Center, and that will guarantee that I'm getting that object snap. When I'm finished, I'll press Escape. Now I'd like to do a little more grip editing. Looks like these extension lines are overwriting the center lines. So I'm going to select the extension, I'll grab the grip and pull it to the end of this marker. I'll then pan over, I'll grab this extension and I'll pull this out to the end of the center line. And it looks like there are 2 extension lines here. I'll select the other one and I'll pull it out to the same point. I'm going to zoom out and I'll pan the drawing down. Let's take care of the diameter and the radius dimension next. I will open the dimension flyout and choose diameter first. I'll select the circle and I'll pull out my dimension. I will then change to radius. I'll select the arc and I'll pull out that dimension. Take a look at the center marks that are coming in with these dimensions. I really don't need these because I had center marks to begin with. Let's change the dimension style. I'm going to go back to the dimension style icon. I'll choose Modify, and on the Symbols and Arrows tab, I'll turn the center marks off. I'll click OK and Close, and you can see that changed the style, modified the dimensions in the drawing. Let's pan this over and we'll dimension the left side of the part next. I'll go back to linear and I'll dimension the overall height. I can do that by grabbing the outside corners of this gasket and I'll pull the dimension out to the left. I'll press the spacebar to go back into the command, and we will dimension from the center line to the upper left corner of the part. I'll then select that last dimension, hover over the end grip and choose Continue. And I'll come up to the upper left corner of the gasket. When I'm finished, I'll press Escape. I'll then pan over. Now this dimension doesn't look exactly like the example. To make the correction, I will select it. I'll hover over the grip that's on the number, and I'll choose Move with Leader, and I'll pull this up. I'd also like this dimension to be to 3 decimal spaces. Since it's still selected, I'm going to right click, and in the menu I'll change the precision to 3. I'm going to zoom out, pan this over. Let's dimension some more widths. I'll go back to linear, and we'll go from the upper left corner of the part to the gasket. I'll then press the spacebar to relaunch the command, and we will dimension the width of the gasket. And I'll pull this up and snap it to the endpoint of the previous dimension's arrowhead. Let's go back into linear, and this time we'll dimension how far the gasket extrudes from the edge of the part. As you can see, this dimension doesn't match the example. I'll hover over the grip on the number, and I'll choose Move with Leader, and we'll move this to the other side. Let's zoom back out on the finished example. Only a couple of more dimensions left. Let's take care of the dimensions on the right side. First, I'll dimension the overall width, and I'll pull out that dimension. Then I'll dimension the distance from the center line to the upper right corner of this interior edge. This dimension needs to be to 3 decimal spaces. I could do that with the right-click menu. Let's try it a different way. I'll select the dimension, and I'll come over to the Properties palette. Mine happens to be anchored to the interface. If yours is not, you can press Ctrl 1 to bring your palette up on screen. I'll then drag down through the dimension settings, and inside the primary units group down here at the bottom, I'll change the precision to 3. I'll relaunch the command, and I'll dimension from the upper right corner of this edge to the upper right corner of the part, and will snap to the arrowhead of the previous dimension. Finally, if I want to be really particular, I should move this number out just a little bit. I'll do that by selecting the dimension. I'll click this grip, and I'll pull out the number. Now as I do this, you can see it's hard to keep this in line with the previous dimension. I'm going to come down and turn on my ortho. This will ensure that I pull straight up. Let's zoom out. I'll then pan over. I'm going to center the view of both drawings on screen. I'll click to put the focus back on my drawing, and we'll create some callouts next. I'll create a style first. I'll do that by opening the annotation panel. I'll click the multi-leader style icon, and I'll choose New. I'll call the style my callouts, and I'd like these to look similar to the dimensions. So in the leader format tab, I'm going to change the arrowhead size to 0.125. On the Content tab, I will ensure that we are using the Notes and Callout text style, and I'll make sure the text height is 0.15. I'd like to do one more undocumented thing. Take a look at the length of the landing line. This is quite a bit longer than what we see in the example. So I'll select the Leader Structure tab, and I'm going to change the landing distance to 0.1. That looks a little bit closer to our example. When I'm finished, I'll click OK. My callout style is now current, so I'll click Close. I'll then flip back to the Notes and Callouts layer. Let's zoom in a little bit. I'll launch the multi-leader command, and I'll create my leader from a point nearest the right edge of the gasket. I will turn the ortho back off, and I'll pull this out and create my note. I'll also click Hold and Drag to give myself some word wrap, and when I'm finished, I'll click on screen. I'm going to back up a little bit. We'll pan the drawing down. Let's create the note in the lower right corner. I will relaunch the multi-leader command. I'll pull this note out to the right, and instead of applying a column width this time, I'm going to manually hit the Enter key to format my text. Based on the example, it looks like we need to change the arrowhead of this leader. I'll select the multi-leader and come over to the Properties palette. I'll drag down to the Leaders group, and then I'll use the arrowhead setting to change this to a dot. I'm going to zoom out. We're almost finished. Looks like we need to create the logo next. That's going to involve another text style. So let me click to put the focus back on my drawing. I'll open the annotation panel and click the text style icon. I'll make a new style, and we'll call it Logo Text. Click OK. Based on the callout, this style will have a font of Arial Black. It will also have a width factor of 0.5. And since this is a special purpose style, I'm going to set the height right here. We will make that 0.45. I will click Apply and Close. I'll create the logo using single line text. I like to justify it using the middle option, and it's going to be middle justified between the intersection of the arc and the center line, and this vertical line and the center line. My middle point is going to be defined by Shift right click, mid between 2 points. It will be the midway between the intersection here and the intersection here. I'll press Enter to accept a rotation angle of 0, and then I will type Ready Light. When I'm finished, I'll press Enter twice. Finally, we'll add the remaining callout. I will zoom in, and I really don't have an object snap I can use in this case, so I'll click Close to the text. Click Close to the text. Pull this out, pan the drawing up, and I'll add the note. When I'm finished, I'll click on Screen. I'll zoom out and center both of these drawings on screen. How did you do on your drawing? If you got it finished, congratulations. I couldn't be more proud. If you struggled, don't worry, this was a difficult exercise. Now that you've watched me go through it, try completing the drawing again using this video as a guide. When finished, try drawing it again, completely on your own. With a little practice, it won't be long before you're annotating your designs like a pro.